everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Rise Up Voices from the Front Lines. And today I am bringing you an amazing special guest who has given 27 years of his life to law enforcement. He is an advocate for mental health and wellness, breaking the stigma, and the value of making real human connections. Please welcome Brad Steve.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. I was very excited to meet you, and my favorite connections are those people that my friends say are amazing humans, and it's someone that I have to meet. And that is how you came into my life. Is I was told you were an amazing human and we had to connect. So
appreciate that. You got some good friends.
Yes, definitely some amazing friends. So this podcast is always completely unscripted, uncensored, so you can say anything that you feel like you want to say. It's really important, I think, for people to know they're not alone, for people to know that whatever it is that they're going through, other people are also going through, and to hear stories of survival and overcoming, and that even with survival and overcoming, we're all still on that journey of healing together.
Yes.
So I always like to start at the beginning. So tell me a little bit about your childhood.
So my childhood, grew up in a two-parent home, small village town up in upstate New York. Had both parents always involved, loving parents, hard workers, instilled hardworking in my brother and I. Very athletic family. We played many sports. I played football all the way up through high school and into college. My father was my football coach. So, close-knit type family.
Was law enforcement something that was generational for you?
Yeah, so I got into it. My uncle started off in law enforcement, and then it then was passed down. My brother got into law enforcement first when I was in college because he's a couple years older. And so then I thought it was a good idea to get into it myself, which I did. And then also I got many family members that are in, cousins that are into law enforcement as well. So, we have quite a few, and even the younger generation of family members, extended family, are getting into law enforcement. And my younger son now wants to get into law enforcement, who's going to be 20 in March.
Is that still feeling like a positive to you?
It's positive in the sense of, that he's following what his father did. Is it positive for me after everything I've been through on the job that, I think he's going to be a great officer, but it also worries me as a parent, going into law enforcement in this day and age, and, with the trauma and everything else, if not being able to handle it correctly, it could create a wall like it did with me as, I got older, and it creates problems.
So you have had a full career. You've been in law enforcement for 27 years, and a lot of people don't make it that long. So what was it like for you the first few years?
First few years, it was exciting. You get into it, you're out there, you're, as you would say, running and gunning. You think you're, it's just that adrenaline. It was a constant adrenaline growing up. I was always that adrenaline junkie, and first starting on the job, you just want to go out and work numerous hours and just be on the job and do exciting things. So the first few years, it was exciting.
So I hear quite frequently from officers that there is this idea that you're invincible. Like you feel invincible and it's not going to happen to me. And like you see bad things happen all the time to other officers, but you have this idea that it's that won't be me. Did that?
No, you always did. Probably midway through, I wouldn't say midway, but after probably 5 years in, I got real big into training. So I always, try to prepare myself, for the worst type scenarios, and constantly, be hyper vigilant and vigilant of what's going on in my surroundings, being self aware. But you do have all that's not going to happen to me, or you have that persona. You don't think it's going to until the shit really does hit the fan, and it's happening to you. So, and, the trauma that we experience a lot of times, as cops, we push it to a side and we don't cope with it because excuse my language, to speak freely, is you're always treated like if you're to talk about it or address the trauma, you're being a pussy. It's just get back out there and do the job.
I've had a few officers who have said the most detrimental thing to their mental health literally is their fellow officers, because the biggest sharks are those that are in the tank with you, because everybody's having that struggle. Like, as soon as I show weakness, they're gonna pounce on me. They're gonna not trust me. They're gonna not want to work with me. They're gonna think something's wrong with me. They're gonna make fun of me. There's like this whole, like, what is that experience like for you?
So I was always looked at as, I hate to say it, but was the guy that everybody wanted me backing them up. I was that hard nose. And I mean, you do, back then, you get that stigma of being weak. People, they say you're on the rubber gun squad or you're that, oh, something's wrong with you, can't do it. And I think everybody does it. I mean, everybody gets involved in that. And looking back now of my career and doing that, it's like, it's not effective. I mean, we have to, it's generational. And that's why I take such a passion in it, because, I was one of those guys who was hard nosed, went to the wall, everything. And, I want to change that stigma for the younger generation, especially if my son's going to do it. So I want them to be able to, because the way it's affected me, burying that stigma, like I'm a tough guy, it has affected me throughout my life. And it's created a lot of issues within my family. And, I don't want to see my son go through the same thing.
So, what was your journey through the chronic trauma, that traumatic stress that you experienced? Like, when did you notice that you were having symptoms of having so much exposure, and what did you do when you started having symptoms?
So I would say, I right around when I was getting, I mean, I never really looked at it. You get into this, now you look back on it, and, you get into this thing where you just hate people. You don't want to be around people, all you're dealing with is negativity. So you become negative. And, you bury the trauma that you're in, you just go to work, you come home, you create a wall. And that's what, I was doing, is creating walls at home and, being on that hypervigilance and coming down, and nothing's ever good enough. And, so I look back, there's many telltale times that I could tell that, I started going down that road. And back January 14th of 2024, I was involved in a shooting in 2016, experienced a lot of other trauma of, kid suicides and a bunch of stuff you always push back. And I can remember like 4 or 5 real cases that stick in my head that never go away, and a lot that you forget about. And I was involved. I retired in 2019. Still went back working part time, just the camaraderie, and you figure that's who you are. That's all you can think about. That's who you. I'm a cop. That's it. That's all I know how to do. So I just went back work part time, and I was involved in another shooting in January 14, 2024. Just a garbage call. I was, guy had a gun. I, shot him, and he shot me in the chest in my vest. One went by my head. He shot 6 times at me. Luckily, I was able to make it out of there, not physically injured, but I think that was the Pandora's box that opened up the floodgates. It wasn't the incident of shooting itself, but I think that's just, it was so traumatic that it opened up the floodgates to all the other trauma. So that I could, then I started feeling myself spiraling.
The proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.
You got it. Absolutely. So, and it was
So,
like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
you're a big advocate for telling people that it's really important to connect with other people, that it's really important to express your emotions, that it's really important to let this stuff out early. So what changed your mind from this tough guy cop who doesn't want to show any weakness to saying, hey, I need to get vulnerable and this is really important?
When I seen it really affecting, my family, my kids noticed it. I had moved out of the house. I am getting divorced, and nothing that my wife did wrong. It was more me throughout the years of, marriage, putting that wall up and just seeing, my kids noticing a change in me after that. And, and I think I started drinking a little bit more than I should have probably been too. Felt that spiral. And, then it got to the point it clicked. I mean, if I didn't, suicide rate amongst cops is high. I mean, it's one of the highest death rates amongst for suicide in the profession. And, I was getting to a bad place. And, I finally made that determination, was self-aware enough where I said, I need to go away. So I actually made the call and I went to Harbor of Grace, which is in Maryland, which is a mental health and wellness for first responders and military. So I made that, choice on my own that, I wasn't forced to say I need to go here to get healthy.
And you were one of the strong ones, right? Asking for help really takes a massive amount of strength. You're in a very large area. You're in a big city. So did it help you to make that choice that you had been exposed to so many others who didn't make that choice to get help?
I mean, you think you're strong, you hear everybody, you actually ask for help, that takes strength. You look at it, but you don't feel strong. You know what I mean? You still feel weak because that stigma that's still put on there and how you're looked at. And, so when you made that, and I'm very boisterous about it now, because I was looked at, and I feel people like myself or other, men or women who were like me that, were the go-getters, who were looked upon for certain stuff on the job and training. I think it takes people like us to actually be advocates for it, to make that change. So it's not that stigma, like, so people can have that option to go and not feel weak. And, I'm making that choice, and, I'm pushing it up here in New York State. We have what's called the SAFE Act. And, if guys do go forth and say, I'm not feeling good about myself, so they want to kill themselves, under that SAFE Act, they lose their guns and, they'll lose their job. And to me, that's unfair. It's unfair for all the men and women and, that work as cops up here in New York State, that, if we need help, we got to keep quiet, and that we got to go elsewhere out of state to get it. And one thing that bothers me as well is I don't care what political party you dance with. That's your decision. That's your choice. That's why we're here in America. However, let's not talk about defunding the police, and let's, be advocates for the police and be advocates for the mental health of cops, because if we have healthy cops on the street, you're going to have way better decisions. We put men and women in the streets that are unhealthy. What kind of outcome do you think you're going to get out of that? They're human. They're not immortal. They're human. They have feelings. They deal with stuff at home just like everybody else does. And I mean, they're looked at, held at a higher standard, but at the same token, they should be allowed to get help. And we got to get rid of that stigma here in New York State and everywhere else. Is we are human. We should be allowed. You want a healthy cop on the street, then allow them to get help, or you're not going to have help.
Right. That problem is the reason that Battle to Be was born. That disparity between there being resources available that are actually private and confidential, and the belief. I had this strong belief that police officers and firefighters and everyone else should have at minimum the same rights that everyone else does to their privacy, and that their mental wellness should be completely confidential, and that the idea that you're going to lose your job if you say, hey, I'm struggling,
right,
is such a heavy weight that, like, it's literally a big part of the suicide problem, right? Because if you can't get help, what are you going to do? You're just going to get worse and worse and worse until finally you can't take it anymore. And those are the options that you're given. If I ask for help, I lose my job.
Yep.
If I lose my job, I lose my identity, and that's everything.
Yep.
So now there's practitioners that are filling that gap, trying to bridge that middle place where, oh, there's a gray area. If we're licensed therapists and we see you as a licensed therapist, it creates a problem. So we're going to create these programs where we can see you under the radar so that we don't have to ever say we saw you. And like, you have to work in the gray areas and dance with, you know, these laws and these rules to create an environment that actually creates healing. And that is not the way it should be. Right. No. We should be encouraging regular mental health and wellness, like all the time, not even when you're just struggling, but make it just a normal thing that it's part of your training. It's part of your, like, it's accessible to you all the time, and nobody tracks it and nobody pays attention to who's seeing the therapist. And it just like the therapist goes with you in your car and hangs out with you. And if you happen to talk to them about something serious, so be it. Or if you just talk to them about their poodle and the great coffee you got down the road, like, it doesn't matter. It's none of anybody's business.
That's the way it should be. I mean, it's, we luckily we do, like, my therapist that was up here, Kim Butler. She's the mental health and wellness director for Monroe County. She also has a private practice called the Blue Line, and she's actually been doing that. Like in Ontario County, she goes and rides with officers during their shift, and she just bills the county a number. They have no idea who she's talking to, what they're talking. She'll just jump in a car with somebody. And I mean, that's the way it should be. We should have that freedom to get things off our chest and to talk about, especially with the trauma and the traumatic things we see. People don't see the things we see. And a normal person sees maybe 4 critical incidences, 4 traumatic things in their life. Cops are 400 times. So how is it? I mean, logically, we look at it and say, oh, no, but you can't talk to anybody. If you talk to somebody, you're weak and you're going to lose your job. It makes sense. I mean, I just don't understand the thinking behind it.
So you cut out a little bit when you said the practitioner's name, and I do want to make sure that we are bringing forward the resources that are really working out there and that are doing a really great job. So what was the therapist's name and what is her program called again?
Her name's Kim Butler. She's the mental health and wellness director for Monroe County, and she also has Blue Line, where she actually goes out and does ride-alongs with sheriffs in the Ontario County area and some in Monroe County as well.
So this is a beautiful model. This is something that we can really start implementing everywhere, and we need to be implementing everywhere. It's very important to find a way to get help to people who need it in a way that is completely actually private and completely confidential and doesn't have any detrimental side effects for our officers. So shout out, because that's an amazing program and it's a rare program.
Yes. So, I mean, she does a phenomenal job. Yeah, she does a great job. And she's, me and her teamed up and, we're trying to get this exemption in the SAFE Act here in New York State, meet with politicians, trying to get to Albany up here to meet with the governor to try to get some exemption in there. We know there's going to be checks and balances with it, but at the same token, it would be nice to get an exemption to that SAFE Act. Kim and I are trying, so we can actually have a clinic up here in New York State. So, keep trying to fight the good fight with it, but we'll see what happens.
So what is your message to people that are out there and don't feel like they have support and don't feel like it's safe to seek help?
I would say get rid of that stigma. There's always people out here that are willing to talk to you. There's always people willing, tell them. And I've talked to a few people, also David Butts. He does OP Overwatch, former FBI agent out of Buffalo. He does the same thing. He has groups, and he does it more of a clergy, not as a therapist. He does it more of a faith-based clergy, but holds roundtables. And there is, people like that out there, like him and Kim, and even them, they pass people on to me, if they could call me from, not even around people that I've worked with or around my area, from out of, and I've been more than happy to talk to them. And it's like to encourage them to get the help they need, because in the long run, it's only going to affect you. It's going to affect your kids, going to affect your family. And that shouldn't be that way. So, I mean, the more people that start coming forward in a positive way in supporting the mental health, which you do see kind of a shift when I first started on the job 27 years ago compared to now, there's a huge shift. I mean, I would say it's definitely gaining traction. And, I just want to see it continue to gain traction and, move forward, and let's do what's best for everybody involved.
So what would be your, like, do you have a favorite quote or a favorite book or a favorite resource or something that you would want to leave with
I
our
went
audience?
down in, Maryland at Harvard Grace, which, I'm going to be, it was a phenomenal program. I wish I had something like that 20 some years ago. To go to an institution like that, I want to say institution of mental health and wellness. You want to, get an institution, been institutionalized. But you go down there and being around other first responders and even military that, you're not alone. They're feeling the same things. They've been through the same things, and being around other cops, firemen, EMS, anything. I mean, being around other first responders and military that are experiencing it was comforting, one, because now you get rid of that self guilt, like you're weak. You're not, everybody's dealing with it. There are guys that are SWAT team, everything, your biggest, baddest dudes, going through the same thing. And the things I learned in there, like we would do groups, and you'd learn off of one another, which was, how it affected your family and get, ideas. And it was just a great atmosphere. And I got to say, you say books is one of my favorite books that I think I got them. We used to every night around 7:30, we would have a group. It was all the first responders, not military, just first. They had their their own thing. It was a book called Ruby Slippers. And it was such an easy read, and it pertained to everything in life. And you could sit there and pinpoint things out in your life that may have gone wrong or things that relate to you. And everybody would read a paragraph and we'd go around. And I mean, I seen grown men and women from that book actually have a mental break where they just sobbed and cried at that table in front of other first responders, where you would never see that any other time. And the thing is, and everybody was there being supportive. You weren't looked at if you broke down crying. You weren't looked at as being weak. And that book, it was just a great tool that they brought in that we used, that, it was just, and you could relate to it. And, people just let it all out. I mean, I didn't have anybody in that group. Sometimes it was 12. Sometimes, go down to 5. There was never, and you get something new out of it. Even if you read a chapter over the next night, you always got something new out of each chapter.
Love that. We'll find it and we'll put a link for that book, from probably available on Amazon.
It is.
Most everything is.
Yeah. I'll take a picture of it and send it to you actually when we get off, so you can post it. It's just, what if you could get a group of people together that are in that and actually read that? That was one of my goals too. I even working in the school, I wanted to bring it in. I think it'd be great group therapy, mental health therapy for kids in school, just that they can relate to. Because at the end too, there's questions. Like, you can answer questions. You don't have to, you know what I mean? There's just a lot you can do with it, and just redo it with people. It's a great tool.
Love that. So we did touch on something that I think I want to bring more to the forefront. How important is community in terms of mental wellness in the first responder environment?
You got to have a good community base with that. I mean, you got to have a group of people, even up here, because there's not, I mean, it's so limited amount of people that will admit and actually get the help they need. And I know Kim's trying to do, even with the amount of just in our area of men and women that have gone down to Harvard Grace, where, she's trying to see if the guys and women will get back together and meet monthly with each other up here as a group. You know what I mean? And I think that community, and just like with, Dave Butts with OP Overwatch, just going up there, even out of the area. I mean, Buffalo's about an hour and a half for me, but just to go up there to sit amongst the group up there and the welcoming you feel, and that's that community, and to be able to talk and just get different outlooks on things. And, it's huge and it's needed. I mean, you got to have that strong based community of people that are willing to be there for one another and help. I mean, and as cops, we like to bitch a lot. We like to bitch and we like to complain and nothing, but at the end of the day too, when the shit hits the fan, like after my shooting, the support and the amount of people who were there for support. And even after, even me opening up, I'm surprised the amount of support that I got, and guys that still check on me. Even after I told my story, still checking on me. So I think, the community is huge. And once they see people close to them that are going to share, that aren't afraid to put it out there, you're going to see more people fall in line and start doing it as well.
What do you hope the future for law enforcement looks like? What would your vision of mental health and wellness support 10 years from now? What do you think that would look like?
I hope it's just there. It's just like another training, and it's not looked at, and there's no stigma attached to it. I would like to see, like we talk about, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. Dave Butts, I keep saying him, he brought up something. He goes, why do we put the disorder on the end of it? Why not we just call it post-traumatic stress? He goes, we didn't ask for this, so why they got categorized this as a disorder? I'd like to see with mental health, just like anybody else, that we just, as first responders, people understand that we're human and that we should and deserve be able to get help as well. And, I hope that down in 10 years is just part of the system. I mean, it's just like, if you need help, go get it. Obviously, we carry guns. So there has to be that checks and balances with it. You know what I mean? Like if you are struggling that bad, yeah, you got, there's checks and balances to go ahead before you return to duty. And, cause you're out there dealing with a lot of stuff and with the triggers. And I mean, and things like what Kim are doing, that's great. You're having a shitty day. And then all of a sudden out of the blue, here comes, a therapist with a great personality jumps in the car with you and you're able to spill your beans and not have anything to worry about. That would be great too. That in the future we have more than that. You know what I mean? That you see people start putting the money into the mental health and wellness, just like we do in schools for mental health and wellness with our kids. And, same for first responders.
Perfect. All right. Any last words?
No, I thank you. I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to get this out to people, whether, who sees it here in New York or wherever, you know what I mean? It's just great. And the more cops to speak up about it and do it. And I think we can do good things with it.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you everybody so much for being with us today. And anyone who knows me knows that like I'm not supposed to have favorites, but oftentimes my favorites to work with have been our police officers. And I'm going to release this episode with a link for the RISEUP responders community, which is the Battle to Be online service as well. I'm also going to put the links to find out more about what's going on in New York with the program that Brad mentioned. And I'm also going to put the link for that book so that you can follow up and find out more about what that is about. And if you have any questions or comments, or you would like to connect with either of us, as Brad said, he will listen. He is there. You can always connect with me as well at no charge. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are serving those who serve in any capacity that we can. So you're not alone. There is help for you. And there are ways to get help, even if you're in a state or a city that has really tight regulations on not letting you have any privacy of your own mental wellness. So we are all out here fighting that battle. Hopefully we'll get some of those rules changed for you, some of those laws changed for you. And it will be very interesting to see what happens with this current administration and the funding for mental wellness as we move forward. Today's episode is brought to you by Doug's General Automotive. And if you need repairs on your vehicle with good old-fashioned values, proudly veteran owned, and proudly offering discounts for military veterans and first responders, and you happen to be in the Houston, Conroe, Willis, Texas area, Doug's Automotive is going to be an amazing place for you to go. Thank you for being with us today for today's episode of Rise Up Voices from the Front Lines.
One.